Okay, my name is Aquino. The title of my paper was The Effect of Weightlifting Shoes on the Kinetics and Kinematics of the Back Squat. I have a little bit of a stuffy nose, so bear with me if I sound kind of goofy and sick, please. Okay, so just getting into an introduction and overview of the topic for this presentation. The paper that I read and I looked at mainly is concerned with the suggested benefits of weightlifting shoes and trying to specifically look at what some of the kinetic and kinematic changes are when you wear weightlifting shoes during the back squat. Weightlifting shoes are pretty prevalent right now in athletic and recreational populations, and there's a lot of proposed benefits, so they just wanted to clarify some of that. I attached this picture down here that shows on the left-hand side a traditional flat-footed back squat, and although this person isn't wearing weightlifting shoes, the right picture looks at what would happen if they did wear weightlifting shoes. The heel would elevate, which in turn creates some changes at the ankle, knee, hip, spine, the trunk. So we're going to look at some of that, and then we're also going to look at what the potential influence of training age might be, and if there are differences in effect sizes from inexperienced groups and experienced group when it comes to practicing the barbell back squat. Looking at the proposed effects of weightlifting shoes on squat mechanics, the first one's pretty simple. It provides, or it's supposed to provide, more stability to the foot, the ankle, and the knee. If you've ever worn a pair of weightlifting shoes, you'll know that they're relatively heavy, and when you wear them, you do kind of feel like they're locked into the ground. So it does help with stability, but they're not a shoe that you would want to wear during a marathon or anything like that. The elevated heel is said to promote an upright torso and help the lifter initiate the squat with a neutral pelvis, which in turn could lead to more of a neutral curvature of the spine and reduced trunk flexion. And the reduced trunk flexion would, in theory, create anterior knee translation, because essentially the flexion has to come from somewhere. So if the trunk is flexing less, the knee might be flexing a little bit more. So the authors wanted to look at that. And then just more of a formal purpose, the study wanted to look at the effect of footwear and load on the mechanics of squatting in both experienced and non-experienced populations. And then from a practical perspective, if you're a strength coach, a sports scientist, whatever you do, when looking at these results, you would be able to determine what specific kinematic advantage weightlifting shoes might provide, as well as which population would be best suited for wearing weightlifting shoes. So let's get into the subjects and the actual procedures of the study. There were 32 participants that were grouped according to sex and experience. The first group was the experienced group, which had a minimum of 12 months of training history utilizing the back squat on a regular basis. And then the second group was inexperienced, which had no background of utilizing the barbell back squat and were still participating in some form of recreational activity. This is what the protocols themselves looked like. So very simply, they both started with a standardized warm-up, but the inexperienced group, they did their unloaded sets, which they're unloaded, but they still had a barbell on their back, because we'll get into the markers a little bit later, but they did have 2 markers on the barbells that they used. So that's what they did. They squatted with just the barbell in a weightlifting shoe condition and then an athletic shoe condition. And then the loaded sets, again, they're novice lifters, so they used 25% of their body weight, and then they did 5 reps in each condition. That was a randomized order, by the way. And then the experienced group did the same warm-up, the same unloaded sets, but then they kind of warmed up with utilizing 25% of their self-reported 1 rep max for 3 reps. And then they did 3 reps of 50% of their 1 rep max, and then they did their loaded sets with 75% of their 1 rep max for 5 reps in the weightlifting shoe and 5 reps in the athletic shoe. And the experimental setup, this was kind of just what the lab looked like. So as you can see, the authors utilized an 11 camera motion capture system that captured data at 200 hertz. And then what was cool about this study is that if you look in the middle there, you'll see the square that says FP, and that is a Kistler force platform that collects data at 400 hertz. So they were able to synchronize both kinetic data from the force platform system with the kinematic data that the motion capture system provided, which you can see in the results a little bit later, provides some pretty cool metrics. And then the subjects also had markers placed on the traditional anatomical sites like the ASIS, PSIS, the thigh, the knee, the tibia, the ankle, the heel, and the toe. And then, like I said, there was one marker placed on each distal end of the barbell. So data collection and processing, like I said, the motion capture data and the force data were synchronized, which let the authors utilize inverse dynamics to create or calculate knee moment, ankle moment, those kinds of metrics, as well as looking at joint relative angles and absolute angles, which lets you not only look at what the joints are doing, but also looks at what some of the force metrics and actual muscle values could look like. So getting into the actual effects and the results, this was for the unloaded condition. So as you can see, there was a reduction across the board in ankle flexion when wearing the weightlifting shoe. There was also a greater degree of knee flexion when wearing the weightlifting shoe, as well as a more upright trunk position. My red box is missing, but if you look at the trunk, it's started right there, and that signifies a more upright trunk position. And then there was also a significantly greater knee moment, which suggests that the knees are potentially more of a primary mover in that condition. And then there's the trunk. Moving on to the novice loaded condition. So for the novice lifters, you can see that there was a reduction in ankle flexion as well. I mean, this is going to be a pretty consistent theme whenever you elevate the heels. There was a greater degree of knee flexion, an increased knee moment, and a reduction in variability in the center of pressure. So for this particular group, it reduced the variability in their center of pressure, which might be a good thing since they're novice lifters. You kind of want them to be as stable as possible, and this is kind of what signifies stability. Now, in the experienced group, with under the 75% of their 1 rep max, you also saw a reduced ankle flexion. You also saw a greater degree of knee flexion, and then it was interesting because you actually saw a decrease in their an increase in their variability. I misspoke. A decrease in their variability. And for the ankle moment, that went up as well in the weightlifting shoe, although it was relatively, the magnitude was a little bit low. So all in all, wearing weightlifting shoes while performing the back squat elicits changes to the athlete's movement during the squat. We actually can confirm that now. The practical application and the implication that we can get from this is anyone who's limited in squat depth and maybe can't meet their increased hip flexion or their desired hip and knee flexion that they want, and their ankle dorsiflexion is limiting from that utilizing the squat, they can be in a good position to utilize a weightlifting shoe, and the weightlifting shoe might allow them to achieve a greater squat depth while promoting an upright posture. And then although the knee and ankle joint moments between the two footwear conditions, the increases were clear in the results, the magnitudes are pretty small, so the actual muscle forces might be a little bit different, but overall they're not as significant as some of the changes in joint angles. And that is it. Thank you very much.